Welcome to A&N In Depth. This is a special episode recorded in IATEC, the Adventist Institute of Technology in Brazil. I know you wish you were here with us, and actually I wish you were here with us too. This event has been fantastic. I'm here with Jader Feijó, who is the head of technology for the innovation arm of British Telecom. Jader, you don't work for the church at all, but you are at an event for church technologists. What do you do regularly and why are you here?
Right, so I had a team of innovators at BT who are trying to essentially spin up new startups from within the business. So innovation is at the core of what we do. We are really trying to revolutionize a very old institution, and part of that is looking externally and trying to figure out what are the new opportunities that we should be chasing after in terms of technology, but also what are the things that we're doing internally that could be revolutionized and could be changed to allow the business to move leaner and faster into the future.
BT is a massive company, right?
Yeah.
And innovating massive companies is often very hard because they put so many processes in place that make it really difficult. We are a very old institution, organization. The Adventist Church, it's our 160th anniversary this year, so it's a big birthday. But this means we also have those very large, very complex bureaucracies and processes and operations. And you came here to see what the church was doing. You're a Seventh-day Adventist yourself. How do you see similarities between the industry and the church?
I don't think it's very different at all. I think that the challenges that the church is facing are not that different from the challenges that massive organizations that aren't Silicon Valley based are also facing, because these organizations are big, they're old, as you said, they have lots of processes in place, they're very anxious about change, about exposing themselves to undue danger. So anything and everything that you do has to go through a lot of process of risk analysis. And if especially with things like Gen AI, for example, if the risk is not yet known, the policy is just don't do it, right? Or do it in a very, very limited setting, in a very isolated corner where you can't really have much impact. So I think the anxieties are the same. And I can understand, obviously, why the church also has some reluctance around adopting some newer technologies. But at the same time, we need to adapt and we need to move forward. I think the question is, how do we do that in a way that is safe, that doesn't jeopardize the foundation, that doesn't necessarily rock that foundation that we're standing on.
How do you think we should approach innovation based on our size as a church and based on our tradition, on our values, and so on? What are some ways we can do it so that we can mitigate the risk, but still trying to innovate? Because our mission is extremely important that we fulfill it. It's a matter of life and death. How do we do it using new technologies without overexposing ourselves to risk?
I think it's important to remember that the instinct to protect the core of the organization isn't an instinct that should be ignored. We have a lot to lose, right? It's very easy to look at Silicon Valley and the innovations that they come up with and think, oh, we should all be like Silicon Valley. All organizations should move fast and break things and adapt. But very recently, we've had an example where that can go very wrong with a submarine that, followed that sort of philosophy and it ended up in a tragedy. So I think that's a very stark reminder of the fact that things can go wrong and you need to move also cautiously. And I think for large organizations like the church or BT, the best way to approach this is to have an innovation arm that is as isolated from the core business as it can be, but that keeps on feeding that back into the core business. So events like this are great because you get exposure to things that are happening, for example, here at IATEC, where you have young people who are very forward-looking, very full of life and excitement and excitement for new technologies, who are crazy about building new things and very excited about it. I think that's brilliant, and the church needs to nurture that. It doesn't have to be done within GC headquarters. It can be done here. It's something that can be done in an isolated data center. You don't have to put your entire data center at stake if you want to experiment with some Gen AI, for example. And once you've proven that and you've built something and you've proven that it can be safe, that's when you can look into deploying that into the core of the organization.
What do you think are some of the possibilities of technology over the next few years that will have an impact in the mission of the church?
I think the obvious one is generative AI. This is not a fringe point of view at all, because it's very much an accepted fact that this is going to disrupt the way that we interact with technology fundamentally.
What is it for those that are not familiar with it?
It's a very, very good statistical model, so it can predict things very well, but it's now getting to a point, and we don't really understand how it works exactly. Even the experts that have built it are also struggling to understand why certain properties emerge when these models become really, really large, but it's capable of reasoning. So it's capable of actually thinking to a degree. It still requires a human to input something, but it's very different from going to Google and searching for some information where you're just getting the information and you still need to make sense of it. Generative AI has the power to actually help humans make sense of it. I use it all the time in the context of writing code, and it's very brilliant at doing that, very brilliant at helping me understand a piece of code and helping me understand where things might have gone wrong. And I think it's going to have an incredible impact for things like evangelism and the mission of the church, because our mission is to spread the good news of the gospel. And people need to arrive at an understanding of the world. All the church is really is an organization that's trying to help people see the world through a different lens, because that's what Adventism is. It's a new set of lenses. And that's a long process sometimes. It takes time for someone to learn to see the world in a different way from a biblical lens. It takes studying. And Gen AI can be really impactful in that process of study, in that process of discovery. I don't think it's going to replace humans. I think humans are going to be pivotal. And if anything, it just elevates the role of humanity in the world. But it certainly will change the way that we do things, absolutely.
How would you encourage a Seventh-day Adventist that may be young enough to try new things, with some time to try new things? What would you encourage them to do with AI in the next few years to enable them to be more effective in the future?
The internet gave us instant access to the world's information. It was all available at your fingertips. So this increased the velocity with which someone could access information. So with enough desire and time, you could learn almost anything, because you had all this information now accessible to you. Generative AI takes that even further. So it helps you not only access that information very quickly, but it helps you digest it and understand it at every level of understanding, which means that it's easier for you to navigate that information to improve your own understanding. So people are very afraid of, losing their jobs to generative AI, and there will certainly be some disruption to the job market. But I think it's really impactful for those that are trying to learn something, that are coming into the market now, to learn how to use these tools, to leverage them, to accelerate their learning, their understanding of the world or whatever fields they're going into, whether it's programming, whether it's cloud, whatever the case may be. It can really help you accelerate your understanding of whatever you're studying. And it's almost like a second brain that you have available to you. You have access to an expert in any field at any time, and that's really powerful.
Are you scared at all of AI?
I think the scary part is not knowing how it's going to be used exactly, is the fact that all of a sudden everyone has access to this. And there's many people that are obviously well-intentioned, that want to use this for good, but there's also ill-intentioned people out there that could do great harm with these technologies. And it's how people are going to use it really that scares me more than anything else. I'm not too worried about rogue AI or things like that. I'll believe it when Siri can get something right. Then I'll start worrying.
Well, I'm going to ask you one last very odd question. You've now amassed hundreds of hours of generative AI experience. If that was removed from your day-to-day life, what impact would that have in your day-to-day life? Because losing something that has become part of your day-to-day life can be a very painful experience. How would you adapt if it was removed from you?
It's a very good question. I haven't stopped to think much about it.
Well, I hadn't thought about that question before we were talking just now. So
It's a very good question. It would be painful because it's like losing access to the internet. It's like I would say it would be akin to trying to program without access to the internet, which I don't do anymore.
that's a great point.
Yeah. If I'm on a flight and I don't have internet access, I don't bother opening my laptop to write some code because for years now, I haven't written any code without access to the internet because it's just so common for you to be querying the internet for bits of information that you need to build the right code. And Gen AI has now fulfilled a big part of that workflow. So I think it would be very similar to that. My initial instinct would be to not do it if I don't have it available. But then obviously if that got taken away completely, I would have to adapt and it would be a painful process of adaptation again.
And you'll probably always think, oh, if I had this, it would be so much easier. That would probably be my experience.
Absolutely.
Jader, thank you so much for joining us here at
Pleasure.
A&N In Depth. Thank you for listening or watching, depending on where you have this. You can share this with your friends. If you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to add comments under this video. Jader will be reading these comments and he may reply to you with further questions. I hope to see you, or at least I hope that you will see or listen to us next week as we come with another interview from IATech at this Adventist Technology Summit.